Now, in Singapore, our racial and religious harmony is one that we have worked hard over the years to develop. People of different faiths live together, work together, and even take steps to understand each other. In order to maintain this peace, we need to find common ground and tolerance. We need to look for things that bring us together rather than differences that divide us. I think many of us share an understanding that both the Palestinians and Jewish people have a right to peaceful existence and a nation of their own. Let us come together in solidarity to support the cause for peace and security in the Middle East. I hope for your support in this motion.
Mr. Speaker, the motion as worded by the three members and the amended motion as proposed by member Mr. Yam is not objectionable and will be supported by the Workers' Party. The first objective of the Workers' Party statement of the 18th of October was to put out this seemingly obvious fact that the latest eruption in hostilities between Israel and the Palestinians should not be seen in isolation, even as we condemned the killing of civilians by any country or organization. A second important aspect of the Workers' Party's statement was to identify the threat of the latest edition of the Israel-Hamas conflict to multiracial and multicultural societies and communities like Singapore. The reality of radicalization and the prospect of uncalled for and senseless attacks against Jews and Muslims all over the world, and a more unsafe world as a result, cannot be understated.
We unequivocally condemn the violence committed by both sides against innocent civilians, especially women and children. The lives of both Israeli and Palestinian civilians must be protected. PSP supports Singapore's long-held position that a just, enduring, and comprehensive peace in the Middle East must be based on a two-state solution, based on relevant UN security resolutions. We urge Singaporeans from all communities to be mindful of what we say and do regarding this issue, especially on online forums. We all have the responsibility to refrain from engaging in inflammatory rhetoric that could threaten the peace and harmony that we enjoy in Singapore.
All Singaporeans are horrified, are saddened by this latest escalation of the Israel-Hamas conflict. Anyone with a heart must feel pain when we witness the suffering of fellow human beings, regardless of race, language, religion, ideology, or allegiance. Let me take this opportunity to explain the principles underpinning the Singapore government's position on this unfolding tragedy. First, Singapore must always take a zero-tolerance approach towards terrorism. We have to be categorical in rejecting terrorism, whoever, whenever, wherever it is perpetrated. And as I said just now, we do so not just out of sympathy, but because terrorism is a clear and present danger and threat for Singapore and Singaporeans. Second point, international law dictates that all states have a legitimate and inherent right to defend themselves. If Singapore is ever attacked, we would certainly assert and exercise the right of self-defense. Third point, all countries must ensure that if military action is taken in exercising this right of self-defense, they must abide by the principles of necessity and proportionality. Fourth point, humanitarian assistance must reach the affected civilian populations immediately. And that's why we call on all parties to enable this, and particularly Israel and Egypt, which have immediate borders with the Gaza. We strongly support all these efforts by the immediate neighbors, as well as by the UN and all the other relief organizations to increase aid to Gaza. Fifth point, Singapore continues to uphold our long-standing and consistent position that a negotiated two-state solution, consistent with UN Security Council resolutions, especially 242 and 338, that a two-state solution is the only viable option for a comprehensive, just, and durable solution to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. My sixth point is that we must not allow external political events, painful as they are, we must not allow these external events to divide us in Singapore. Yesterday, the Prime Minister reminded us this is not our quarrel. This is a quarrel amongst our friends outside. And our job is to be sympathetic, to be compassionate, to speak truth to them, to be helpful, but not to pour oil on a fire. Our religious and racial harmony is very precious. We must not allow anything to break this or split our society. And it is heartening that so many of our faith and community leaders strongly feel this, say this, and operate on this basis. The seventh point is that the safety of Singaporeans abroad is always a priority for us in MFA. On the 7th of October, we advised Singaporeans to leave Israel and the Palestinian territories as soon as possible. We reached out to Singaporeans who had registered with MFA and we facilitated the departure of those who needed assistance. But even today, you might be surprised to know that 40 registered Singaporeans remain in Israel and the Palestinian territories. We do our best to remain in contact with them. They have chosen to remain. More than 120 other Singaporeans heeded our advice and left by land or air earlier. We must never allow conflicts elsewhere to divide us domestically. I am glad that today my sense of the House is that we have unanimity. We will have consensus in voting for this motion. And I make this appeal as Foreign Minister that our ability to conduct consistent and coherent foreign policy in a very volatile and dangerous world depends upon domestic cohesion and consensus.
We recognize that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict is an emotive one for Singaporeans, and there may be different viewpoints. Regardless, the peace and harmony that we enjoy in Singapore is precious. We have worked hard over the years to build up trust across our different communities at different levels. We all have a duty of care to protect and grow it. Our community responded with maturity, and we understand the value of unity amidst this trying period for all of us. We must continue to protect ourselves from being influenced by the barrage of information, misinformation, and disinformation that enters our social media platforms as feeds. We are a diverse people. Some may have personal connections to the developing situation in the Middle East. Some feel strongly about it, understandably. We ought to be mindful and take extra effort to be respectful, to be sensitive, and kind. Let us not let these perspectives hurt our relationship and unity in Singapore.